We're going to kick off the artificial intelligence Upstream panel right now, driving a 40% reduction in our carbon footprint. So if you guys want to take your seats, that would be awesome. Just a quick reminder, so in case somebody gets hungry, I think they will be serving at around 11:30, 11:45. Food will be over here next door. You bring it right back in. And they will be serving until 1:45 in case you're on the panel or anything like that. So we just got done talking about cybersecurity and all that great stuff. And the best thing I love about this panel is it's after the bottom of my heart, because we started doing e-commerce in upstream, in fracking in 2015. So our problem was not cybersecurity. Our problem was, I don't want to use that app. You know, I got a flip phone. Oh, I didn't even know they still made flip phones. Well, some people I just think just hang on to them, so we can't automate it. So today we have a great panel, and I am so glad you guys made it here and made the travels, in some cases all the way across town, in some cases Austin, which is not sure if it's further or not based upon how far we came from all across town, Kelly, right? So today we have Kelly Goldwake, VP of Supply Chain at XConnect. We have Douglas Stevens, board member of Altera. If you don't know Douglas, he is former head of Frank's International, and I believe also at Schlumberger, right?
Yeah, and I was with Baker as the president of their division for a number of years, and now I work with Blackstone, the investment company, on their oilfield services side, and on the board of the portfolio company, Altera.
There you go. Perfect. So it's kind of funny. I came from the former vice chairman of Blackstone as the former head of investment banking at DLJ. What the heck was I doing there in 1990? I didn't even know I was going to get into supply chain. So he's going the opposite direction on me. Congratulations. David Nightingale, CEO of CIG Logistics. Yes, he's moving a ton of sand, proppant, everything.
Not as much as I'd like though. So
Yeah, right. So we will sign a contract. You're available for contracts today, as well as Chris Scola. You know, he's VP of Supply Chain at Atlas Sands. You know, when I saw Atlas Sands going out and buying local mines, that kind of set the trend right there. Something was going to change in the Permian, and it did. So with that, we'll get started, and I'm gonna let you go first, Kelly, because you know it's ladies first. You know, military style. I've been getting hit with this from all my military friends in here today. Exactly. So thank you for coming, and feel free to tell us what you're currently dealing with and how you're dealing with supporting your customers.
Okay. Hello. So AI and how they reduce the carbon footprint. That's so interesting. How we are using AI, we're using it probably a little bit differently than we did pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic. There's definitely been a difference on how you're using the AI to meet your customers' goal. And should I be more specific? Just the information that you can get in real-time data that you can then use to augment your forecasting, because no one expected in March of 2020, 30 days out, what would be happening to everyone's supply chain. But by having that information, by seeing trends, and by having strong supply relationships, if you were working your supply relationship management programs, you were able to head off the disaster that befell the industry. So that's kind of broad, but that's basically what we're doing. We're using our AI to strengthen our relationships with our suppliers in order to ensure reliability and mitigate our risks.
So to that point, you know, every time we have a downturn or upturn, whatever, you know, we want to go through the cycle. You know, I think one of the points is that your customers are like, oh, can you buy this inventory back from us? We need to lay off 20% of our people, blah, 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 blah. Oh, 2 years later, why is it 18 months until I'm gonna get that same part, that same valve, or whatever I need? I mean, that's just one of the most common things. So whether it's AI or it's just common sense, how do you guys deal with that from a procurement side of being there for your customer?
So for us, it is again, and I feel like a broken record, but it is focusing on that supplier relationship management program. And it is the first thing that nobody wants to hear about. You're right. When the market crashed, how do we reduce inventory? How do I don't want to pay that bill. How do I pay that bill that I'm supposed to pay, even though I've received the material? Managing that with your suppliers and strongly so that when the upturn happens, they're not closing the door on you and saying, hey, you screwed me when we were all hurting, and so now I'm going to supply David because they didn't. So that program, that's what we did, and I'm proud of it. We don't have 18 months. Because of our supplier relationship management program, we have not had a hitch. We had our pricing stay firm. Just a lot of things, and I'm sorry, the details of it, I'm not being too detailed, but because of that, we're in a better position. I know X-Connect's in a better position. In fact, it was in such a good position, Ranger Energy bought Perfect's Wireline. We used to be Perfect's Wireline, and Ranger bought it because of the position we were in financially coming out of the upturn.
Right. Well, it's a good insight. I want to go right back to labor, back from the initial thing that I believe William brought up this morning. I mean, it kind of has got to be a little scary to be on the other side of his conversation. We are the top payer for our truckers, right? I mean, if you're not familiar with the whole driver shortage, I mean, it comes around every other year, probably, and, they're probably paying $10,000 finder's fees just to get a new, trucker, at FedEx or whoever for that matter, whether it's LTL. So, I think probably the best thing that you guys offer is that the guy can be at home at night, right? So that, maybe.
What home does he?
Yeah, that's true. Which home? You might have to get him multiple
Carlton
homes.
Logistics House in Montague. That's
Right. So, if you can give some insight on that, because I think that is really the toughest thing you got to solve, and beyond the fact of you can be utilizing great technology, but at the same point, Charlie's just not available. Let's see if that works.
Okay. Well, for us, I came on board the end of February 2020, so perfect time. At that time, we had 720 employees. 2 months later, we had 107. And we had no work. Not one truck was rolling for 2 weeks. So it was a pretty drastic change. And we went all through the organization. And now you go and try to ramp back up. And you're telling me drivers, we put a lot of drivers on furlough. We kept them on because we hoped it was short term and we could pay their insurance and they'd come back after it was all over, but it wasn't short term. I mean, we were able to bring some drivers back, but a lot of them, they're never going to come back to this industry. And it's not about the pay. I think that's the key. You hit it. It's not about the pay. I can pay them a lot of money. I mean, we can figure that out, but we can't offer them they're going to be home every night. We can't offer them that they're going to have this beautiful drive through some of the most beautiful scenic country in all of West Texas. What we're going to offer these guys is you can work a lot of hours and you can make a lot of money, but that's about it. Now, we've added some additional things. We as a company have new trucks. Our trucks are 3 years old or newer, so that attracts some of the younger drivers. We have automatics. Believe it or not, a lot of the young drivers don't know how to drive a stick shift. So one of the big selling points is have automatic, they can drive automatics. Another selling point is we talk about relationship with your customers and your suppliers. We negotiated with Target Logistics, which is a big housing provider for us. They're our number one vendor. And we were able to provide very good housing. In fact, to the point that when I sit down with my drivers, many of them tell me the the most important thing you do for me is provide good quality housing. It's clean, the food's good, and it's in a location that's close to where we work. So those are the things we try to provide at the table, along with trying to get good pay, good benefits. One of the things we've tried now is we're offering a cafeteria approach where we offer different benefit packages and different pay packages for drivers. Say, for an example, if a driver wants full benefits, he'll get 16 hours a day. He gets his load bonus, and he gets to stay in housing. Well, if you don't want your load bonus, we can give you a higher rate, give you housing. Or if you're a local guy, or maybe have a house or have a trailer, we offer you a higher package and no benefit other than our standard benefits, but no housing. So those are all things that we're doing, trying to let them pick and choose what makes sense for them. And hopefully that attracts some drivers, but I could easily employ 150 drivers now, and I've got 60. So long ways from where we need to be.
Right, there's the problem, right. So have you gotten away from paying per mile?
Yes, we pay by the hour. That's not the most efficient way to do it, obviously.
Right.
But we talk about our AI. We have some pretty good tracking mechanisms on the trucks.
Mhm.
We are hoping to get to the point where we can start dropping out the lower percent. Right now, you can't afford to drop any driver. I don't care if he's not the most efficient guy, you can't afford to drop anybody. But what we try to do is really monitor those lower performing drivers and set them down and say, here's an efficiency problem, because you've got to get a certain amount of turns.
Well, I can tell you that there's a lot of people in the transportation side, and they're trying to not get away from price per mile. So it's good that you've done that, because you can incent them in a different way, but there's a tremendous amount of, that's, I'd say 95% of the industry is getting paid price per mile, and they're coming up with elaborative bonuses. So you've stepped out, and I think that's a good direction to go into, because these guys have got to be incentivized beyond the mile. Have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chris, go for it. How are you guys doing? And what is what's your thoughts in where we're going into the, whether it's, we look at it just from bulk or sand in general, where is the business going as we know it in the Permian? You're right dead center there, supporting the industry in a big way.
Yeah, I think, Atlas has taken a slightly different approach, I would say, out there than some of the other, mines. To put it in perspective, right, we have, on great days, we have a truck coming in every 58 seconds, leaving our facility, right? And the time that they're spent on our facility is actually less than 10 minutes. So, you start to talk about, okay, automation, right? You can automate any process out there. We're huge fans of automation, as long as the payback is there, right? When you look at automating a complete supply chain end to end, having no people, you reach a point where there's certain things and where you look at it and you say, man, the return is just not there for us, right? We can deal with it from a manual basis. But once you reach that kind of 80 to 85% threshold on there, it really allows you to flourish in the downturn and the upturn. Reason being is, right, automation all starts with baseline processes. If you want to automate terrible processes, you will have a terrible supply chain at the end. So you have to put the time and work up front from a process perspective to make sure that what you're automating is actually what should be automated, not just automating bad processes. From a labor perspective, where this really helps is, twofold. One is, you look at what happened in the headlines and service companies in Houston dropping, 20 upwards of 30% of labor overnight, right? You sit there and you go, gosh, how did they operate before, and they could just poof overnight, let go of 30% of their workforce and be okay, right? From my perspective, that's a lot of inefficiency internal. And I think that's what the automation brings, is efficiency. You got to do more with less from a people process perspective. Every day is what is expected in just about every supply chain out there. As you automate, it requires, we love our people, right? Don't get me wrong. but it requires less and less people to do more. So in the downturn, when you get down, you can't sit and say, hey, I can eliminate 20-30% of my workforce, because you're already so efficient from a workforce basis that you let somebody go and you don't have enough people to even cover a shift, right? That's the type of true running lean perspective there is. And then when the upturn comes, right, you can do more with less. With those same amount of people, they can scale really when you need them to scale with underlying processes, rather than monitoring each and everything. I know, coming from supply chain and chemical world, it isn't a manage the supply chain anymore. It's manage the exceptions. And I think truly when you can get to the point where you have the AI running in the background, you have all your KPIs set up, you have, here's your soft warnings and your hard warnings, where you can put it in cruise control and let it run and simply get, the updates and take action on where there's issue. Just allows you from top down organizationally to be able to respond more effectively, and be able to really, integrate with your customers, and get the faster decisions out to the field.
So what you're really saying is you need a more intelligent supply chain to be able to be agile and move any way you can at any time, depending on whether you're bringing on customers or shutting down. Because the biggest thing that I think we touched on a little bit earlier was people are now leaving the industry and they're not coming back, right? And what you really want to do is build a more effective driver, more intelligent driver, and sending him along the way. But then you want him to be a family member for life, right? And that's really where we're going. So, even in the previous downturn, I don't mean to be whatever here. It actually helped get rid of a lot of people that were the ones saying, well, Uncle Charlie handles that. Well, that's why your cost was going up, because Uncle Charlie was handling that, right? There's no room for Uncle Charlie anymore. We have to use the best technology, AI, whatever we're using, and have the best people to help drive that from every level so you can be the most efficient and lean. So, Douglas, we can take it in a lot of different ways. If you want to handle it from how you're helping out Altera, or you go back to material, whatever.
Yeah, so maybe I'll talk from a couple of different ways. I don't, I'm not involved in the day-to-day in the same way that my panel colleagues are, but just to put things in perspective, that I know that David and Chris's firms, the phenomenal strides that them and their competition have made over the last 2 years. To put things in context, it wasn't too many years ago, I was the president of Baker Hughes, and we were running 45 frac fleets around the country, and David said he has, I think, 85 drivers, and he's working on 10 different fleets. We could have done 2 fleets with 85 drivers, I guess, 5 years ago. And that was after moving the sand all the way down from Wisconsin or Minnesota, the rail storing it a couple times. So the steps that the industry has made over these last 5 years, due to necessity because of financial constraints, has made phenomenal improvements. And the title up there is removing carbon footprint. I haven't done the calculations, but one could do the calculations of how much more efficient we are today of moving sand from Chris's mines, just not too many miles away from the Permian Basin, in a handful of trucks in a really efficient manner. If you go to their facilities, the speed that trucks go through today is phenomenal compared to where these, frankly, 30-year-old facilities that we were using just a few years ago. And on the other end, David and his team, the way they're able to turn sand around and process it at the well site, where we used to have drivers literally sitting there for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, is phenomenal. So I think, we always beat ourselves up in our industry. I think the changes, and I see it kind of not being involved directly for the last few years, but as a step change that's taken place over the last 5 years, it's pretty phenomenal. But going on to kind of my role at Blackstone, we see a lot of different companies that get the opportunity to look at a lot of different companies. And one of the things that we always kind of ask is, how can this process be Uberized, right, for lack of a better term? And I think what's happened largely in the frac business in terms of the supply of the particularly the sand, to some extent the water and chemicals, has really been this Uberization or movement in that direction, right? It's companies, trucks, people being called on the fly rather than being there constantly assigned to that rig, and it's just driven efficiency. And when we talk about, I'll talk this case about Altera, which is a drill bit, which is kind of on the opposite end, right? We don't have, dozens of trucks moving millions of pounds of sand. We have a few trucks moving high quality, high cost pieces of equipment. But nonetheless, what we do see coming down the road came up in the earlier panels, is our customers wanting us to be able to track and tell them how much carbon we're putting into their system, right? Or how much, we are in terms of a carbon footprint. And certainly we believe that, again, going to the efficiency of the industry, if we look how many rigs we have today, drilling 10,000 wells, we're doing it with somewhere around 400 or 500 rigs, right? We're producing more natural gas today with 100 rigs than we did 5 years ago with somewhere around 1,000 rigs. So the efficiency that the industry, even though it's 100 years old, has made is phenomenal. And we believe, in Altera and the drill bit business, we're one component of that. And as we look at how we can drive our internal business and become more efficient, because we're in a competitive landscape as well. And here, if there's any techies in the room, I'm not, but when I use the term AI, it's quite more broader than true machine learning and artificial intelligence. I'm talking about how we use software, how we use large databases, how we use IoT and things of that nature. And in our case, we have a lot of very sophisticated CNC machines. How we can make all of those better. I think it starts with the fact that we've got a phenomenal relationship with our customers, so we're able to take the data on what works, what doesn't work, phenomenal information on the drilling process and what works and what doesn't, and how we can drive our engineering process. And because we've got a great engineering and customer process, that allows us to leverage the data that we have from the design of the drill bits and make everyone better. And we also manage, the cutter or the inventory, probably we think better than anyone in the industry, which is why we've gone from being a small player a few years ago to being the largest player in North America today, and we believe the most profitable, is because the information that we have on the condition of the bits and the performance of the bits and how we manage the inventory. And of course, working underneath the private equity company, the management hears daily the importance of cash flow, working capital. So managing their inventory and being able to charge a premium for that is a result of the fact that we have the data on our bits. We have a phenomenal database of the cutter condition on every one of the bits that we've run thousands, tens of thousands of them over the years for every customer. And combining that with our engineering team, and that's all tied into the ERP, so we understand where every piece of inventory, every subcomponent of inventory is along the supply chain, and if we need to make changes as we design better products, that gets driven through without any waste, right? We work one component out till it's completely worn, and then we bring the new ones in, so we don't have obsolete inventory, which frankly, in the technical side of the oil field services, as changes are made, you will find a lot of companies leave thousands or millions of dollars worth of components obsoleted on the shelves, and by using data and understanding our databases and what's driving customer performance, we're able to eliminate them. So I think there's a lot of good things going in. The next step in the process will truly be AI, where we start using, whether it's AWS or things like that, to automate our databases and tie them into the rest of the system. But I would say that, based on what I've seen with these two gentlemen and ladies beside us, I think we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, one key point that, if I want to ring a bell really loud, 80% of our emission issue carbon footprint problem is logistics. So it's 100 trillion that we need to remove. So the biggest thing, and I think this plays to you gentlemen very well, is that if we're driving the logistics operations more efficiently, more effective on Uber type apps and everything else we can possibly think of, that is one of the biggest impressions that you can reduce at an oil and gas company. A lot of people have let this thing oh, this is just a cost of doing business. No, it's not. It's 2021. Get it right. Get on some sort of applications that are gonna work. To everybody's footprint, the discussion about cybersecurity. Yes, don't get on some, wing-ding application. Get on a high-end application. I mean, we moved 4,000 trucks just for one customer for sand, water, fluids, hot shots. We have another customer, we're moving 300,000 hot shots a year. We've been doing Uber apps since 2015. So what our biggest problem was, quite frankly, was Uncle Charlie. So now that we got rid of Uncle Charlie in the last downturn, it's really helped everybody to be more efficient and allowed you guys to get more customers, quite frankly, because you can show the effectiveness of what your teams can do in getting sand there, how much turns you can do, and how you can reduce carbon footprint. There's no question about it. So, to me, these two gentlemen here can make the biggest impression in sand ESG footprint right there in carbon footprint. Now, Kelly, it sounds like you've done a hell of a job at doing a procurement job of seriously getting a ton of inventory so you don't have to, maybe I'm wrong.
I don't have a ton. I don't have a ton, I have just the right amount.
There you go.
I mean, come on. Yes, but using these, like you said, this real-time apps, getting real-time information, and also we have to change. We have to be able, it's not just having the app, it's how you utilize that data, right? If you're not utilizing the data to the fullest, then you become that Uncle Charlie without wanting to become that Uncle Charlie. So and using it that way. And that's what we did. We developed very strong relationships with our suppliers, especially our suppliers overseas. We held the bar very high. We used data-driven negotiations and conversations, taking the emotion out. Everybody was hurting, everybody's struggling, and it was easy for emotions to run high. So when you take the emotions out of the conversation, by using all this information from the apps, the data in real time, you're more successful. And we're one of the best in the business in doing it. And by being on both sides, I know that, because I was before in previous jobs, and knowing what we're doing now, we are one of the best in the business.
Very good. Congratulations. I'm going to go a different place just for a second. So do you think, or are we getting the drugs out of the drivers? So I didn't mean to bring this up today, but I just thought about it. It's still an issue, right? So I know you guys got to have your own safety issues, but how do we, help the rest of the community that's still using these third, fourth, fifth party uninsured individuals, because it hasn't totally gone away. I mean, is there a way that we can act as a group to address this issue somehow?
Well, the government's helped us, well, if you call it government help, they became pretty constrictive. And, I think that is eliminated a lot of it. Also, it's eliminated a lot of drivers.
Right.
One of the reasons we have a driver shortage right now is because we've tightened up so many of the e-logs and the drug testing and so forth. We really have pretty good luck, I think, mainly because we communicate upfront that you're going to be drug tested, you're going to be boom, boom, boom. So don't waste everybody's time coming in here and then fail a drug test. But we do see some, probably not so much in West Texas. South Texas is still a problem.
Right.
And we run very few trucks down there, so that's not a big issue for us. But West Texas, we think we have a pretty clean bunch of guys.
Good.
One of the things I was going to bring up, and I think another thing that's going to make a big difference is we heard this morning the shift from ships to airplanes.
Yeah.
Well, we're seeing a lot of questions being asked right now about moving from trucks to rail.
Right.
And bringing more products in by rail, eliminating trucks. We've just made a big transition into Odessa where we're moving a lot more bulk chemicals and other products into Odessa by rail instead of trucks. And I think you're going to see more and more of that conversation going on. So the key there is it's logistical. It's all about your location. You've got to have terminals in the right location. But there are the railroad is listening, and the railroad is trying to figure out how they can be better competitive against the trucking side.
Yeah, that's good to hear. So you're putting in a new transload facility, or how are you doing that?
We've opened up 5 terminals in the last
wow.
6 months.
Good for you.
East Texas, South Texas, West Texas, Florida. We've opened up a terminal in Florida. We're not moving frac sand down Florida, but we've opened up a terminal in Florida. And we've moved back into Oklahoma. All of those because they've been trucking to those locations and they think they're.
Chris, you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I think just to add on to that, at Atlas, we are a supporting member, board member of the Permian Road Safety Coalition, so this is kind of near and dear to our heart. I think the biggest thing in the discussions that we've had so far is, ultimately, I think a lot of the operators out there, in the downturn, right? A lot of the operators and procurement supply chain organizations, the single most drive was drive the cost down, right? Drive it down. This is what everyone's gone out and done. And, had an interesting conversation with an owner of a trucking company out there, and we were after one of the forums. He said, look, I own this trucking company. I want you to answer me these questions. Okay, great. He said, I run my trucks 100% legal, right? Everybody runs their standard amount of hours. You guys all know kind of what used to be in the oil field, and still exists today, of drivers running dual books, running 2 sets of books out there to make more money, as a large majority of these guys are operators. He said, look, my guys run 100%, I keep them on e-log, and while the operators, this continues to be a price game, right? And what we're getting a lot of is companies that are now kind of not skirting rules, but intentionally building businesses on bringing drivers from Mexico to run to the Permian, and additionally allowing their guys to continue to run non-ELDs, because most of the Permian falls within that 150-mile air rule basis, right? So you don't really even have to run ELDs in the Permian. It's non-enforceable as long as you stay within it. So I think a few things there, right? One is we have a problem with everyone driving cost. What the guy came to me and said is, I run legal. I know I'm competing with guys that run illegal. I continue to lose bids over the price. What am I being incentivized by to run this legally? And outside of insurance, I didn't really have a good answer for him. So we've been kind of working on some things in the background, trying to get a better answer to that question, I think. I think, one of the biggest things is that 150-mile rule. I mean, from an operator basis, I would say that, safety and the ability to dictate who you use and what the standards are. In this industry, the operator really does hold that stick at the end of the day, right? You guys said from an operator basis, hey, I want everyone running for me to run ELDs and report that to me every month. That would occur. So I would definitely encourage the operators from a procurement supply chain side of things to get a little bit more information on those trucking companies, and also on how much they're subbing out, right? There's a lot of trucking companies that they'll win bids out there, and they'll use 2, 3, 4 of their trucks and sub it out completely to someone else that is essentially a brokerage out there, right? So this whole, it's a lot of gray area with very low visibility from an operator perspective. And I think whatever we can do as an industry to eliminate that gray and ensure that the guys out there are running legal, right? At the end of the day, we're operating in someone's community. We're operating where people go to school, where they live, they're grown up. And as a part of that community, we realize that we're part of the problem, but we also need to be part of that solution.
Right, but I think if we can get the companies that are contracting you to really get into the contracts and do an audit, right? It's not just about who's doing it right, it's everybody needs to do it right. If you guys aren't familiar with this, the third parties that Chris was just alluding to, maybe I have 3 drivers and I also have a trucking brokerage license. I can go hire everybody, and I'll create an insurance coverage around that, maybe even up to $5 million. But those truckers are not insured. And guess what? When something happens, somebody gets killed, that LLC disappears and magically becomes another LLC, and they haven't left the business. And that's that's really what's happening, right? And I think that anybody on the procurement side or the legal side really has to get involved with something like that. I would even have thought it was even better now, right? It's gotten better, but it's still gray area. I mean, the typical systems out there will prompt, I guarantee you, these gentlemen know when their driver's insurance gonna go out, when the driver needs to get his driver's license upgraded, any kind of thing you can think of. Even they're on top of maintenance and things like that. So the carriers, the bigger players and the gentlemen like to my left are doing that. But the problem is there's still a lot of kind of sideways stuff and it really needs to get cleaned up, especially if you don't want to have to worry about somebody getting killed. So that's where I would leave it. Is there any questions out from the audience?
One oddball question. We hadn't talked about driverless trucks, autonomous trucks. Do you think there's a hybrid role for such a thing in this industry?
We looked at it real hard last year. I think we've probably spent 6 months testing an autonomous system. What we were going to do is kind of have 3 trucks and with a lead truck having a driver and the 2 trucks following. It works really well for our business because everybody loads at the same place and everybody unloads at the same place. So that type of system really works well for us. We found that the technology, at least the technology we were working with, was not there. And we have very modern trucks. And they picked us to experiment with because they said older trucks, they couldn't do this. So I think we're on a path to get there, but and I was gung ho about this. We were really getting excited. We were even mapping out all of our routes, but they just couldn't deliver to the end.
Any more questions?
Yeah, it sounds like y'all moved past the dashboard kind of aspect and it looks for data accumulation. How are y'all actually going in and teasing that to understand key insights? Because y'all are talking about the KPIs. How does that navigate and actually make actionable results? I mean, tuning conflict is pretty genius. Curious about that.
Yeah, I think there's a few different applications out there, right? From a trucking logistics basis. One of the applications that I love because it literally can bolt onto anything is it's called Domo. We've used it out there. It's a data visualization tool. So any application, any ERP system, any logistics system, any SQL, even Excel, it can link into. And as long as you set these things up properly, it's essentially like a team of built-in analysts back there. I mean, from an analytical basis, once you say, hey, here's the data, here's the process that I want it to follow. If you have any variance from these processes or these parameter controls, send me an alert on my phone. It'll literally send you an alert on a text message, right? Whenever you want. And then from a visualization basis, so not only will it give you, hey, look, here's your alert, but everything's work. How many supply chain people in here go a 9-to-5 job, right? It's just it doesn't happen. So not only is there a platform, from a data visibility approach work well, it's all at your fingertips at everything. So we have, not only our ERP system, our orders, our plant production, loadout times, logistics. I mean, end to end from forecast to order fulfillment and invoicing. You've got at your fingertips on your phone at any time. So I think, if you guys haven't checked out that application, I highly recommend it. We had a bit of the luxury and struggle of building our entire supply chain and system suite from scratch at Atlas. I think we've really done that the right way. But Domo can hook it to anything, and we highly recommend it to any supply chain organization out there.
Are you using bots on the back end for that and then teasing that? Like individual bots at all or no?
No, so everything is it's essentially all brought in the background to their SQL database, merged, and you can cross-merge a number of things. You just set up in advance, any type of I mean, you can set up in advance anything to read out there of, hey, look, my load times went up 20% in the last hour. I want a notification so I can call my team and figure out what's going on. So I would say that what I've seen isn't the true machine learning phase yet, right? You have to set everything up with that list of parameters. But I think, you know, if I know that company well enough, they're probably well on their way there very shortly.
Any other questions? All right, I think I lost my, oh, here it is. So I'm gonna give some awards out, and so we can get started with lunch and get back on time. I thank you all for sharing with us today. Let me get the awards. Douglas, Upstream Executive of the Year. Maybe you should say Transaction of the Year. I don't know. Chris, Sand Technology Executive of the Year. I think you hit it right on the head. There's a mic. David Nightingale, Profit Handling Storage Leader of the Year. I think we all know about it. Congratulations. And finally, you know, we do different things for women here. Upstream Supply Chain Leader of the Year. There you go, man. All right.